Hello and welcome back to the Pick Six podcast with Sawyer Gill. Today we're going to be discussing the biggest and most compelling matchups of Week 5 and and all of the big conference matchups. So let's get right into it. Before I get started though, I do want to say I'll be doing this a little bit differently than I did last week. This week we're going to be doing it conference by conference, and at the end of the show, I'm going to give my lock for each conference. So a bet that is just going to be safe, I think, off of my research and scouting. Um, so yeah, um, Week 4, interesting week. Week 5 is not gonna be what Week 4 was. Week 4, I think I read this stat off last show, but most inter-ranked matchups since 2015. The most times a ranked team has played another ranked team in 1 week since 2015. What is that? 8 years ago. That is pretty insane. I don't think we aren't gonna get that amount of anticipation, but who knows? This week could turn out to be really cool. And a really great week for college football. Let's get right into it. We're gonna start out in the Pac-12, in the Western Frontier. So, on Friday night, the Oregon State Beavers take on the Utah Utes. Interesting. This one is an interesting game. The bookmakers, the lines are insane here. Oregon State minus 4.5. That surprises me. Utah has really shown us their true colors this year. They have a great defense. They can survive at least with Nate Johnson in at quarterback. We'll see how he does this year without Cam Rising. It's tough, when you lose your starting quarterback, but he's playing all right. Obviously, 14 points against UCLA isn't great, but they'll take it, especially with a win. And I mean, that defense is just popping. It is popping. On the other side, though, Oregon State, DJ Uiagalelei, not a great game against Washington State. Not a great first half against Washington State, I should say. He really came back in the second half, though. But Washington State ended up beating them 38-35. And yeah, you look at DJ Uiagalelei's game, only 198 yards, an interception, 1 touchdown, 17 for 34. For the amount of times you throw the ball 34 times in one game, you should get way more than 198 yards. I'm not a college football player, but that's a little bit surprising to me. I don't know. But yeah, according to ESPN Analytics, Oregon State has a 58.4% chance of winning this game. I just don't see it. I mean, I don't think Nate Johnson's that great of a quarterback. I don't think Utah even has that great of an offense. But their defense is so amazing. It is Georgia's defense for the past 2 years. It is a San Francisco 49ers defense. It is a staunch defense. They're going to stop you. I'm taking Utah in this game. Minus for plus 4.5. I would take the under. Utah money line, obviously. Just an interesting one out there. An interesting one in Cornwallis, Oregon. So, yeah, one to watch out for. Next, we're gonna go to Arizona, where the Wildcats take on Washington in Tucson. Arizona, the Pac-12 is really good this year, but I think Arizona's record is lying. Who have they beaten? They've beaten Stanford. Stanford is not a great team. They're 1-3 this year. They've beaten UTEP. UTEP isn't a Power 5 school. And they've beaten Northern Arizona. Northern Arizona probably is barely an FCS school. They're probably on the edge of going D3 at this point. So, yeah. And then they lost to Mississippi State, who lost to LSU. Not a great record. The record lies. It's a good record. But I mean, and then they have to even put them up to more fraudulent stuff, to put them up to a better place than they should be. They have Jaden Deloria as their quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, but I mean, nobody's really supplying him. They have a wide receiver, Tatario McMillan, not great. He's the leading receiver with 300 yards in like 4 or 5 games into the season. It's not great. Michael Wiley, 100 yards, and he's our leading rusher. I don't think so. Oregon's offense. I don't think so. Now on the other side of the ball, Michael Penix Jr. up here throwing dimes. 1,636 yards in the first 4 games. He has led them to a 4-0 record, number 7 in the country. This team is not fraudulent. This team is not fraudulent. This team could go far. I think, their team, one team that's the opposite of fraud. They're one team that everybody should be looking out for that they're not. That every team is going to look at this team and be like, oh, they're going to fall apart midseason. No, they are going to be a potential college football playoff team. You know what? I'm taking Washington minus 19. It's tough to take these high lines just because who knows what's going to happen. And minus 19 is a lot of points. But Michael Penix in that offense cannot be stopped. And, I mean, 19, not a lot of points for this offense the way they've been playing. So, yeah, minus 19. Again, the offense, I would take the over 65.5. That's a lot of points, but their offense is just going to keep cooking. So, yeah, that's Washington versus Arizona. The next one we're going to go to is Oregon versus Stanford. Oregon coming off that high, great win against Colorado. Dan Lanning led this team to a victory. They're one of 3 top 10 teams from the Pac-12, just to show you how good of a conference they are this year. But, I mean, are they going to fall apart in midseason? That's the question that everybody's asking. Is this Pac-12 conference going to implode itself and fall apart midseason? Who knows? But this game, they're not going to fall apart. They're playing 1-3 Stanford, probably one of the only bad teams in the Pac-12, other than Arizona State and UC Berkeley. But you get Oregon minus 27. Watching the way they blew out Colorado last game, I would take the minus 27. They've shown that they can blow out teams. They can put up high numbers against teams, bad defensive teams especially. And the Stanford team, not a great team. 1-3. They're one winning coming against considered to be one of the worst teams in all of FBS in Hawaii, and they lost 56-10 against USC, 30-23 against Sacramento State, an FCS program, I think, and 21-20 against a bad Arizona team, a fraudulent Arizona team. So I don't think that they're that good of a team. I think Oregon's going to stomp them. I think Oregon is going to beat them here and then get ready for Washington next week. One of their really tough matchups. So yeah, I would take Oregon minus the 19, or minus the 27, minus the 27. I would take the over. The over is 61, but I mean that's not a lot of points considering what Oregon did last week to Colorado. I know they have a great defense, but I think Stanford is going to put up some points, and even if they don't, Oregon might even cover the spread by themselves. So who knows? But I would take the 61 over. And then we go probably to the least anticipated matchup in the Pac-12, where we get the Arizona State Sun Devils playing the California Golden Bears. These are probably one of the worst 2 teams in the Pac-12 and maybe even Power 5. Arizona State, not a great team. I'm pretty sure they fired their coach last year. They have Drew Pine, Notre Dame quarterback from last year that was bad. I don't really know how else to describe it, but he was bad. Um, they lost to USC, put up a pretty good fight, I won't lie. But then you look, they lost to Fresno State 29-0. That is an insane number. They lost to Oklahoma State 27-15. Again, a good fight against a Power 5 team, but Oklahoma State isn't that good of a Power 5 team. So, I mean, really, what was that? ESPN Analytics has UC Berkeley or Cal beating them by a large amount, 88.4% chance of winning. And I tend to agree with them. I don't think that this Arizona State team is very good. Cal has some nice wins against North Texas and Idaho. They're not that great, but they beat them convincingly. And a tough loss against Auburn, a bad Auburn team, and a bad loss against Washington. But what can you say to that? I mean, they're one of the best teams in the FBS. So in this one, I would take Cal minus 12.5, and the over, just because I think both of these teams can put up points, and two teams that can put up points that go head to head against each other are bound to hit the over, and that segues us right to the USC Colorado matchup. Fun little fact about Colorado, they got more viewers last week than Notre Dame versus Ohio State when they played Oregon, and that was a blowout. So obviously, we've seen that this team can bring attention. They can bring viewers even when they're getting blown out. And Colorado can be sneaky in this one. I don't really see it. The spread is the same thing as it was last week. I told y'all to pick Colorado plus 21 last week. I thought it was a good read. It was not a good read. It was an awful read. They obviously lost by 36 points. Just awful, awful, awful. The over under here is 73.5. I would take the over. USC has Caleb Williams, Heisman winner, could go back to back. I don't think so, but he's probably going to be the number one pick no matter what. And interestingly enough, I would say that Shedeur Sanders is having a better season than Caleb Williams, even though Caleb Williams is probably higher up in the Heisman race. But that doesn't change anything about this game. As long as USC's defense can hold Colorado to even a couple of stops, they're going to beat them. Obviously, Oregon has a better defense than USC. We've seen that in the past couple of years, and that's a trend that's continuing this year. With USC giving up 28 points to Arizona State, like what is that? But no matter what, I think USC is going to win this game just because of their leadership. So USC money line, USC minus 21.5, even though they're away. And yeah, this isn't the bounce back week for Colorado, unfortunately. So next, we are going to move to the Big 12. But before that, I'm going to take a little water break. So yeah, you guys get to watch me drink water. But the first game we're going to be getting into is the Cincinnati BYU game. The Cincinnati BYU game, very interesting. Two new teams to the Big 12. First time we've seen this. Before that, two new teams play each other in the Big 12, and I mean, who knows? But we'll look for a good matchup here. Both teams have good wins. Both of them have proved that they can stay in games with some of the best opponents. Obviously, BYU with Arkansas, who put up a fight last week against LSU, and Cincinnati sort of stayed in there with Oklahoma last week, 20-6. Not great, but I wouldn't call it a blowout. I think Oklahoma covered the spread in that one. I'm checking right now. Oklahoma did not cover the spread in that one. They did by 1 point. So, I mean, bad game by Cincinnati, if you want to call it that. But this game is interesting. They're playing it in Utah, or surrounded by Mormons. Shout out Justin Mulholland. And uh, and yeah, um, yeah, it's an interesting one. Cincinnati -1. Basically a pick 'em. But what I've watched this year from Cincinnati, I think they're a good team. I think they can hang with the best. I think they have a great defense, like they've always had with Gardner, with Kobe Bryant, um, and people like that. And Emory Jones, not Desmond Ritter, but pretty close to that. Corey Kiner, their running back, 300 yards, 4 weeks, 4 weeks into the season. You call it what you want to. I don't really have. I'm not like leaning one way or the other, saying he's bad or good, but who knows? Um, and then they have Xavier Henderson, their wide receiver with 340 yards into the season, 23 receptions. Pretty good. I mean, maybe not. We'll see how the rest of the season pans out for him. On the BYU side of the ball, though, they don't really have a lot of offense. Keaton Slovis is their quarterback, um, and they've put up some points. Obviously, they put up points against Arkansas, but Arkansas is a surprisingly bad defense this year. They put up less than 30 against Kansas. And ladies and gentlemen, let me clarify that less than 30 points in college football really isn't that great. It's honestly an issue. I think when you go back into the locker room with your offense in college football, you know, you want to be putting up more than 30 points a game. And also that ties into the Brian Ferentz treaty that I'll get into later. But with this one, I think with everything we've seen, Cincinnati's played harder opponents, and I think they're gonna beat BYU in that one. So take Cincinnati -1, the over, even though I've said that BYU doesn't score points, and obviously Cincinnati money line. The next one we're gonna go to is Kansas versus Texas. Texas has a 93.5% chance of winning this, according to ESPN Analytics. They're -16.5, and the over/under is 61. There's not much I can say bad about this Texas team. I mean, they have Quinn Ewers leading them to a 4-0 record. I think that they're the best team in FBS. They have a staunch defense, and I heard Andy Staples say this on a college football podcast that they have one of the best. They have first round picks all around their defense, and that they have one of the best defenses in the country. And I can only agree with him. When I see that defense, I see players, I see veterans in college football, and I see people who are just ready to get after the quarterback, ready to get after the ball, ready to get after the receivers, ready to get after the running back, and ready to get after the O-line. And that's exactly what you're going to see from a great, great, great defense. They have great wide receivers. They spread the ball around a lot, actually. They have Xavier Worthy, obviously. They have Jatavion Sanders, people like that. And obviously their leading rusher, Jonathan Brooks, preceding Bijan Robinson as the Texas running back. So I would take Texas -16.5 here. I know I'm picking chalk, but they're beating teams that they should, and I don't think it's going to stop here. Over, again, they're beating teams that they should by totals that they should win by. So I don't think it's going to stop here, and they're going to be interesting to watch in the future. When they play more compelling teams, and I think they play Oklahoma next week in the Red River rivalry, so that's going to be a great one to watch. Next we have a new team to the Pac-12, or not Pac-12, Big 12, Houston versus the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who haven't been that good lately. I think they were good last year, not great this year. Interesting game. I don't really have a lot of comments on this game. I don't know either team very well. Texas Tech, though, I've seen them play Oregon really well. I've seen them score a lot of points. I've seen them have a great defense. They only gave up 21 to they only gave up 20 to West Virginia last week. But it's not looking great for them. And even though they're playing an awful Houston team with wins over Sam Houston State and UTSA and losses to Rice and TCU. And when I say losses to Rice and TCU, I mean bad losses to Rice and TCU. They lost 36 to 13 against TCU. That's a 23-point game that shouldn't be happening. And they lost by 2 points to Rice. People shouldn't lose to Rice. That's not a thing that people do. And they lost to Rice. So, yeah, not great. Next, another new team to the Big 12, UCF versus Baylor. I'm going to give it to you straight up. UCF's not a bad team. Baylor's not a great team. UCF minus 12.5. The over in this one, because I think UCF has always had a great offense, especially behind Gus Malzahn, and it's not stopping this year. So yeah, UCF minus 12.5 and the over. And my apologies if I didn't give the picks to the last game. I'm taking Houston plus 8.5. I don't think either team is very good. And I'm taking the over just because I think that both of those teams can score a couple points. Next one we're going to go to is what I think is the second best team in the Big 12 in Oklahoma, and they're playing Iowa State. Oklahoma is going to win this. Dillon Gabriel, good quarterback, smart quarterback, only thrown one interception this year. That's right, really, ladies and gentlemen, one interception. And I don't think any, except for Quinn Ewers, no other Big 12 quarterback can say that this year. And so he's playing smart football, and a good quarterback. I think it was an Ole Miss transfer. No, he was a UCF transfer. He's been playing great for the past 2 years. Obviously, he got a little banged up last year. Led Oklahoma to a sorry 6-6 record, but Brent Venables back this year. Back better than ever. And Iowa State, not great. Matt Campbell fired. Get him out of there. Losing to Iowa, losing to Ohio, and a win against the sorry Oklahoma State program. Yeah, not great. And then finally, we rounded out in Fort Worth, Texas, where TCU plays West Virginia, and West Virginia. Again, I think they're one of these teams that are fraudulent. I think they've beat good teams in Pitt and Texas, or they've been weird teams in Pitt and Texas Tech, and they've lost badly to a great Penn State team. I think they're going to lose to a good TCU team here. So, but I don't think that TCU is going to cover. I think it's going to be TCU in a close one. So West Virginia plus 14. And then in this one, I'm going to take the over. West Virginia, we've seen a lot of defense in the past couple of years. This year, not really. Obviously they beat Pitt by a lot, but other than that, not a lot of defense. So, and especially on the TCU side, no defense. But yeah, that is the Big 12. Next, we're going to move over to the Big 10, right after I get a sip of water. So, the Big 10. Where should I begin? Interesting conference this year. Not the best in the country. I think the Pac-12 has that crown. Weirdly enough, even though they're splitting up. but still an interesting conference. If you didn't just see, Mel Tucker just got fired. Some inappropriate behavior there at Michigan State. So they're going to have an interim head coach for the meanwhile. But either way, they're a bad program. They were a bad program with him, and I think they'll be a bad program without him. And so yeah. Michigan State, Iowa. Let's just start it off with the with something interesting for real. Well, there's bad people on both sides of the equation here. But Iowa is definitely the better team. Michigan State, they have wins against Richmond and Central Michigan and losses to bad losses to Washington and Maryland. And 0-2 or 0-1 in the 0-1 in the Big 12 and 0-2 in Power 5 play. Not looking great for them. They could end up going 2-10 this year, and I wouldn't bat an eye. So I think they're going to lose this one. Iowa is favored minus 12.5. I don't think Iowa can score 13 points. I'm taking Michigan State here plus 12.5 because I don't think Iowa could score 13 points. I mean, these are two awful teams we're talking about. Cade McNamara with 459 yards 4 weeks into the season. Are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me? 459 yards 4 weeks into the season? He's looking like he's a running back out here, man. Come on now. 100 yards a game? Like, what is that? What is that, man? Step it up. Step your game up. You should not be doing that 4 weeks into the season. Get your stuff together. And that goes for you too, Brian Ferentz. Get your stuff together or else you'll be fired and your dad's going to be fired. Imagine that. But listen, I'm taking Iowa minus 12 or Michigan plus 12.5 here because I don't have faith in this Iowa offense. I think Michigan State might be better off without Mel Tucker. We're going to see it this game. Just an interesting one, folks. Just an interesting one. They have an awful offense too. Let's just face it. So, Michigan plus 12.5 because I don't think they can score 13, or I don't think Iowa can score 13 points, and then over under, which is atrocious, 36.5. You got to take the over when the over under is that low to feel good about yourself and root for points because it's bad. So the next one we're gonna go to, we're just going up the line here. We're going to Wagner versus Rutgers. Interestingly enough, a matchup between a New York team, Staten Island, the Wagner Seahawks versus the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. You're going into Piscataway, New Jersey, where you're gonna face Gavin Wimsatt and Kyle Monongai. I still am bad with that pronunciation. But interesting game. No, it's not an interesting game. It's not. It's really not. Rutgers. They don't even give a line on this one. It's so bad. And Wagner isn't even an FBS team. So I'm going to take Rutgers here, money line. But I don't even think. Oh, you can't bet on this game because it's in. Or my bad. Whatever it is, you can't bet on this game. But if I would take Rutgers money line plus the points. And I think, they're just going to kick the ever living crap out of Wagner because they're a Power 5 team. Next, we're going to go to Illinois versus Purdue. Again, two not great Power 5 teams. Purdue hasn't really been good since Aiden O'Connell left and wasn't really that great with Aiden O'Connell either. They have Hudson Card this year, Texas transfer, who came in for what's his face, Quinn Ewers when Quinn Ewers got hurt. He's an all right quarterback. he's honestly not having that bad of a season. He has over 1,000 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And on the other side of the ball, Luke Altmaier, 874 yards, 4 touchdowns, and bad decision making with the ball. 7 interceptions. Just not great. Then you look at both of their defenses. Illinois, what they've shown so far, does not have a great defense. 17 to FAU and 28 to Toledo, 34 to Kansas, and 30 to Penn State. Yeah, not great. I thought they had a lot of promise, but their offense can't do anything. And at some point, their defense is like, well, we're not going to help our offense if our offense is not going to help us. So, yeah. And then you look at Purdue. Purdue, not off to a great season either. They're one and only win it against an awful Virginia Tech team. And, yeah, that's about it. That's all she wrote. Even though Hudson Card is not having that great of a season, they've given up 3 30-point games. Two of them against Power 5 opponents, one against a ranked team. So just not that great at all. And then, the line on this one, it's even. It's pick 'em. Surprise, surprise. Two very bad teams, but still an interesting game, I guess, for some people. If I was to pick, I would pick. I think they have more promise. They have more hope. There isn't quite dead. I would pick them, and then I would take the under because I don't think these offenses can score a lot. So the next game we're gonna go look at is Indiana versus Maryland. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this. I saw a cringy video of Indiana doing some weird Indiana chant the other day, and it reminded me of how bad Indiana is, and how to take Maryland minus 14 in this one, just because they're Maryland. And then they have Tauili Tagovailoa, to his brother. He's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. Not Heisman candidate worthy, but he's pretty good. This Maryland team, 4-0. They're all right, but they're gonna get stumped up like they always do against one of the Ohio States or Michigans or Penn States of the Big Ten. And they're gonna look at their season and they're gonna be like, well, we got to 4-0. Or even 5-0 at this point. But I would take them, and then I think just because of Tua's brother, I think he's going to carry them in points. Versus Nebraska, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one either. I would take Nebraska in this one because spot where Michigan would kind of not give it away, but tease them like they always do, and then somehow at halftime make one of their miracle adjustments and just light the world on fire. The over/under is 39 here, which I think is too low. Michigan could score that alone. Michigan minus or Rutgers plus 17. Not Rutgers, Nebraska plus 17, and the over, because I think Michigan could score it alone, and they're going to give up some points to Jeff Sims and in Nebraska, even with that awful Matt Rule coach behind them. So, and then, really, Louisiana, Minnesota, completely honest, I think Louisiana has a chance here. I'm not going to talk about this game either, though. I think Louisiana has a chance. Do I think they're going to make it? They're playing away against the Big Ten team. That's tough in itself. And then you're playing against an all right Big Ten team as well. They've been team. So obviously they've shown they can beat teams, and I don't think it's here even against a 3-1 good Group of 5 team. And then the final game, Penn State versus Northwestern. The only interesting thing about this game at this point is the line because Penn State put them out. Who knows what's going to happen in the line? Northwestern plus 20, but that's just because the line I think is way too big, and Penn State's going to give up some. They're going to score the back. So I would take Penn Northwestern 6.5, but I would take the over as well, just because I don't think Penn State's going to score all those points by themselves, but I still think they're going to have. I still think they're going to give up some points to a weird. Ohio State on a bye week here. That's pretty notable. I believe that they're back next week and they're playing Maryland. Again, one of those weird little Maryland. Let's see what happened games. Get a lot better, but honestly, we all know what's going to happen. Ohio State's going to beat them. That's how it goes. That's obviously there's the chaos factor of college football, but I just don't think so in that one. Where the Mississippi State Bulldogs take on the Alabama Crimson Tide right after this. So the Alabama Crimson take Bulldogs. And an interesting one, folks. Situation is interesting. I've said it. I've been preaching it from the hills for the past 2 weeks. Who knows what's going to happen to him? He throws a pretty good ball, not a great deep ball, medium, but other than that, he throws a pretty good ball. But I mean, it's like he could get sacked at any moment against every single defense. And even rush, he could get sacked. And I think they rely on his on his running skills, and just get sacked and more sacked. And even though this is a away game for Alabama, they showed a lot of promise with their defense last week against Ole Miss, and I think they're going to do the same here against Mississippi. Shout out Brandon Walker. Will Rogers sucks though. So Alabama minus 14.5, and I guess the under. Both of these teams have an interesting offense, all right defense. Mississippi State, they beat Arizona, awful to LSU, and honestly, when they beat Arizona, they didn't have, didn't have the greatest defensive game either, 31-24, and they lost to South Carolina too, 37-30. So who knows what's going to happen in this game? I would still take the under though, just because I don't believe a second in Mississippi State's offense. Do I believe in Alabama's offense? But against these teams, I think they're going to put up points. Look at an interesting one here. The Florida Gators versus the Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky favored in this one, even though Florida's ranked. How crazy is that? Graham Mertz leading Florida. NC State transfer Devin Leary leading Kentucky. Kentucky, not really any statement wins yet. They beat Vanderbilt in the first week. Vanderbilt's an easy win. They beat Ball State. They beat Eastern Kentucky, and they beat Akron. Yeah, no statement wins at all I see on that schedule. But this is their first test, and it's one of 4. One of big ones coming up, as they have Florida, Georgia, Missouri, Tennessee, skip because they have Mississippi State. That's not really a test. And then they play Alabama. So really favored. I don't know at all. Florida playing great. I believe they beat Charlotte last week. Yeah, last week, beat Tennessee the week before that. Only bad loss coming to Utah, I think, team. And, I just think Florida's a good team too. So I think I would take Florida +1. I just like the over in this one. UK seems to put up points like they always do. Devin Leary's thrown for over 1,000 yards this season. So yeah. As I'm looking at this, I'm not going to talk about too much of these games in depth anymore. I think I'm going to talk about LSU and maybe even this Tennessee South Carolina game because that was interesting last year. None of the let's see here. Texas versus Arkansas. Arkansas kind of against last week against LSU. They had a chance and they let it go. Texas A&M obviously plays LSU last week of the season, so we'll know by then what's really going to happen. But this game always weird in AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. It's always one of the weirdest games. Never predict it. You never know who's going to win. I think Arkansas has won it in the past 2 years. Or maybe they split it with Texas A&M 1-1. But I would take Arkansas on this one. I think Arkansas had a lot of potential. And I think with favored -6, I would definitely take Arkansas. I think they're going to cover the spread. I think the over it because I think both of these offenses have a great. I think both of these teams have offense. Even with Connor Wegman being out for the Texas, I think they're going to score a lot of points. So yeah. Next one, Auburn, Georgia -14. Georgia's going to do that because so is Brock Bowers. So yeah, they're going to do it. There's not going to be any miracle in Jordan Hare here today. So Georgia -14. And I'm going to take. What do I want to take here? The over looks good to me here. I think Georgia's going to give up some points. I don't think they're going to give up a ton of points, but I think they're going to step back this year. So yeah, Missouri -13 against Vanderbilt. Smash that. That is my pick. And yeah, LSU versus Ole Miss. Cool game. LSU -2.5. I would take LSU -2.5. I don't think Ole Miss is good. I think LSU has lost to a great Florida State defense. LSU -2.5 here. The over, which is wildly up, 67. I would take the under because I don't trust Ole Miss's offense. I think we learned that last week. So yeah, game. If Jayden Daniels shows out, then I think LSU. Obviously, they have Malik Neighbors having an insane season. They have Logan Diggs having a pretty good season. So yeah. Next, you go down to Knoxville, Tennessee, where the Warriors take on. This is an interesting one. I would take South Carolina plus the points. I think South Carolina is going to do the same thing that they did last year to Tennessee. I think they're going to shock the top 25. I think they're going to beat them. I think Spencer Rattler is looking for a revenge game. That Georgia game, I don't think Mississippi State game satisfied him. He's definitely looking for some, and I think he's going to get it here against Tennessee. So I take South Carolina -1/2. And I would also take the over because this game went way over last year, and I don't think it's going to change this year. I just don't believe a lot in Joe Milton. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's a smart quarterback. I think there's a difference. I think he's grown a lot, but I think this is a chance for him to get upset in his own house, to be completely honest, again this year. So, yeah. We are going to go to our last conference now. Some interesting matchups this week. Definitely interesting. We do get them. So, 1 second. So, we're going to see first Louisville led by Jack Plummer, and I think Jake Plummer's son, um, leading Louisville against NC State led by NC. They lost badly to Notre Dame, and I think that was they beat UVA not by a lot of points. And I think they're a good team, but I don't think they're a great team. I think it's tomorrow, 7 o'clock on ESPN. Louisville minus 3.5. I think Louisville is going to cover that. I think they're a right team, but I think NC State's a worse team. These offenses can really operate very well. Obviously, I think Louisville had a shootout last week against Boston College. Yeah, scratch that. Actually, never mind. Don't take the over. I mean, don't take the over. Louisville looks like they're just blowing teams out at this point. Not stopping either. 56-28, 21-14, 56-0, 39. Yeah, they're blowing teams out. I would take the over here. Yeah. Then we take it into the Saturday slate of games where we see first Clemson taking on Syracuse. Can I get an upset alert? Clemson minus 6.5 away against Syracuse. Syracuse almost upset them last year in their home house. I think it could happen this year. I think it could happen this year in their own house. And so who knows? But I would watch out for Syracuse. I would definitely take them plus 6.5 because that's if they're not true. That's not my lock of the conference either. But I will. So yeah, next one we're gonna go to is my early. I'll give it right now. My my ACC lock of the week: Boston College minus 3.5. Virginia. I hate to say it because I'm a Virginian. Worst team in the FBS. Worst team in the Power 5. I'll just say that right now. They suck. Whoever the quarterback is, Anthony Colanderia, not great. Not a great season. I mean, scratch that. He's having they're a bad team. And then you get Castellanos on the other side, Thomas Castellanos, who's the leading rusher for both teams. I think that's a sign. They have a pretty good quarterback. I usually don't like quarterbacks who rush a lot, but I like him as an exception. He's the leading rusher of both teams. I think Boston College offense is going to get at this Virginia defense, who is pretty good. Offense just stinks. So I don't know. So yeah, Boston College minus 3.5. My lock of the week, and then I'm gonna take the under because I think both of these teams' defenses are pretty good. And Boston College's offense, they're gonna score, but they're not gonna score 53 points total. And I don't go with UVA's help either. So the under in Boston College minus 3.5. Next we're gonna go to Atlanta, Georgia, Bobby Dodd Stadium. The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets take on the Bowling Green. I think it's the Eagles. Line is Georgia Tech minus 22.5. I'm not too confident in this one, but I'm gonna take Georgia Tech minus 22. James King, pretty good quarterback, 1,000 yards to start off the season. Texas A&M fans are shaking their head. They have a bad quarterback, and then he moves over to another team, and just completely. This Bowling Green team is 1-3, and they haven't had that big of a test really. They lost 38-7 against an in-conference Ohio team. A great Bowling Green team this year. And I don't think they're going to beat Georgia Tech either. So Georgia Tech minus 22. and I think the over is going to hit here. I think Georgia has put up they were in a shootout last week against Louisville. I don't think that they're that great of a team, but I still think they're going to put up some points against Bowling Green. Kind of a get back week for them. So yeah, the over. Speaking of back weeks, Notre Dame 4-1 Notre Dame against 4-0, and probably what's going to be called the game of the week here. And I've spoken enough about this Notre Dame team. They're a good team. We've seen how they play. Sam Hartman, a disappointing week last week, and Esther a pretty good week. I've heard they're hungry. I've heard from multiple reports they're looking to get after this team. They're putting the behind them, and I believe what they say. They're gonna get it here, even in Durham. So, yep, and we're gonna take Blacksburg. Hopefully, I can one day get to Virginia Tech. But 1-3 Virginia, led by Boston for quarterback Phil Jurkovich. And I'm looking at my stream, and I think it's a message from the transfer portal. The top 3 guys on my screen right now, as I scroll up, Sam Hart, Haynes King, and Phil Jurkovich. Let me read it off to you. Haynes King, Tech transfer. Hartman, NC State transfer. Forest transfer. And Phil Jurkovich in college. Transfer portal changes things, man. It does. Moving on. Pitt's some tough loss here. They lost Virginia. They lost to North Carolina. They lost to Cincinnati. They're not that great of a team. On the Virginia Tech side, Old Dominion, they've lost to Purdue. They've lost to Rutgers. They've lost to Marshall. It's too often playing each other. I don't want to pick this game. It's two awful teams playing each other. They're 2.5 points away from a pick 'em, which is not football, and over under of 39.5, which is awful. God. But either way, I think Pitt has more guys that are great, more defensive guys, just more guys in general. And I think Pitt's going to win this one. They've looked good against better. And, I just don't think Virginia Tech's that good. Virginia team very good this year in college football. So, yeah, so rounding out my ACC. And then, the week for the ACC is minus 3.5 against Virginia, one of the worst teams in Power 5. So now I'm just gonna go through my locks of the week to end the show off. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Stay safe. Watch some college football. Watch some high school football. Watch all kinds of football because football is great. But let me just go through my locks of the week. My Big Ten lock of the week. I'm gonna go with Maryland minus 14.5 because I think they're looking past this game really quickly and just move on to the Ohio State game. My Pac-12 lock of the week is Utah plus 4.5. I don't think this Oregon State team is very good, and I think this Utah team, just looking to get after it. I think Utah has a tough schedule coming up against UCLA or against after next USC and Oregon in back-to-back weeks. So tough schedule. Them. They're just looking to get past this one. So I would take them plus 4.5. They probably even money line. But Utah plus 4.5 is my lock of the week for that one. And then we're gonna take it out to the SEC, where my lock of the week is gonna be over over 45 in the Florida Kentucky game. I just think points. Just a lot of points here. Line of plus 12. I don't think this was the Tennessee team that we saw last year. Obviously, I think they're going to take a step back, even against South Carolina, who they lost. But yeah, take a step back, and 12 points, way too much. Then we rounded off in the Big 12, where my lock of the week here is Texas minus 16.5. They're really just trying to beat teams at this point and beat teams by a lot. Playoff committee that they are the best team in the college in college football. Like, I think they are. So yeah, that's my lock of the week for all 5 conferences. Texas rounded out with minus 16.5 at home against Kansas. Yeah. Thank you again. I'll see you on morning for the recap. And yeah. All right.